Ready to dig into appreciation at work? We're breaking down Chapman and White's The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace today. Getting those appreciation vibes right can make a big difference, and that's what we're exploring.
What's really interesting about this book is how it tackles this idea of money being the main motivator. Obviously, salary matters, but the authors argue it's not the be-all, end-all when it comes to being happy at work.
Yeah, it's about feeling value beyond the paycheck, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of those deeper things we should be focusing on?
A sense of appreciation, genuinely feeling appreciated. The book argues that not feeling appreciated can actually make a good salary seem less valuable. Like, imagine being paid well but feeling overlooked.
Yeah.
Not a good feeling. And this impacts companies too. You see lower morale, people aren't as productive, and more people quit.
So it can really backfire on a company if they're not careful about this whole appreciation thing? How do we get it right then?
Well, that's where this idea of the five languages of appreciation comes in. The book suggests we all have our own ways of feeling appreciated, just like, well, spoken languages. These are words of affirmation, quality time, acts of service, tangible gifts, and physical touch.
Okay, let's break those down a bit. Starting with words of affirmation, what does that look like in the workplace?
Basically, it's about giving verbal recognition, but in a way that's authentic and specific. Not just a generic good job, but really pointing out what you appreciate about their work or what they contributed.
So instead of just saying, great presentation, you might say something like, the way you used those visuals to explain that complex topic really made it easy to understand. It was super engaging.
Exactly. It shows you were paying attention and that you value their skills. There's a story in the book about Dave, an accountant, who actually quit his job because he felt invisible. He was good at his job, but he never got any positive feedback, and it made him feel like he wasn't valued.
It's a good reminder that how we show, or don't show, appreciation has a ripple effect. So how do we make sure our words are actually landing the right way?
That's where it's key to understand what each person prefers. Like, some people hate public praise, others, it's like fuel for them. The authors talk about using something called the Motivating by Appreciation, MBA inventory. It helps you figure out what makes people tick so you can tailor your approach.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's talk quality time. Is this about cutting back on work hours?
I wish. No. Quality time here means giving someone your full attention, being present, engaged, whether it's a one-on-one, a team lunch, or just asking about their day and really listening to the answer.
Making them feel heard and valued. It's like when you're talking to someone and you can tell they're only half listening or checking their phone. Not a great feeling.
Exactly. The book gives this example of Cindy, an executive assistant who has a ton on her plate. For her, feeling appreciated means getting help when she's overwhelmed. But her boss just keeps piling on more work and tries to encourage her with words, which just isn't what she needs.
Sounds like a classic case of speaking the wrong language. So for Cindy, her boss pitching in and helping with a task would mean so much more than just saying, you're doing great.
Absolutely, and that's why understanding those individual languages is so important. What motivates one person might not do anything for another.
Okay, on to acts of service. So are we talking about literally doing someone else's work for them?
Not exactly. It's more about helping out, lightening their load in a way that's genuinely useful and supportive. Like offering to grab a coffee for a colleague who's slammed, proofreading a report, even just being a listening ear if someone is stressed, showing that you value their time and well-being.
So it's less about some big gesture and more about the smaller, everyday things that can make a difference.
Exactly. And there's this great example in the book about Dr. Jones, an optometrist, who is fantastic at this. He's always going above and beyond for his staff, like ordering lunch, covering shifts, even offering opportunities for professional development, all these acts of service that really make his employees feel appreciated.
I want to work for Dr. Jones. All right, next up, tangible gifts. Are we talking extravagant presents here? I hope not. My budget wouldn't survive. But really, what counts as a tangible gift at work?
It's not about how much it costs. It's the thought behind it. Even something small that shows you get them can mean a lot, like a book by their favorite author or a gift card to that coffee shop they love.
Showing you're paying attention. Like you were saying before, generic gifts, not so much.
Yeah. Got to personalize it. The book actually talks about this guy, Joe, who really valued tangible gifts. And for him, it wasn't about getting expensive stuff. It was the effort someone put in. They knew he was a baseball fan, got him a ticket to a game, meant the world to him.
Shows how powerful these small gestures can be. Speaking of tricky, how do we handle physical touch in the workplace.
Yeah, you've got to be really careful with this one. Super aware of boundaries, cultural differences, all that. We're definitely not saying go around hugging everyone.
Right. Got to keep it appropriate.
Exactly. But there are ways to use physical touch that can be really good for showing support, like a high five when someone does a great job, a fist bump, even just a pat on the back if someone's down. Key is to be aware of what people are comfortable with and the overall culture of your workplace. What flies in one place might not in another.
Reading the room is key, especially when you're not sure about someone's boundaries. Better safe than sorry.
For sure. And it goes back to remembering to speak other people's languages, not just our own.
Just because I might be a high five person doesn't mean that's going to land well with someone who's more reserved.
Exactly. The book talks about this woman, Stacy, who's all about words of affirmation. She's constantly praising her team, but one of her team members, Carolyn, she really values acts of service. So Stacy keeps giving her all these compliments while what Carolyn really wants is help with her workload.
Total appreciation mismatch.
Exactly. And it ends up frustrating both of them. Stacy feels unappreciated, Carolyn feels unsupported, all because they're not speaking the same language.
Like trying to have a conversation in two different languages, it just doesn't work.
Huh.
But putting all this into practice, it feels a bit awkward sometimes, doesn't it?
The authors actually talk about that, the weirdness factor, that feeling self-conscious when you first start trying to express appreciation differently. They say acknowledge it, use humor, just be genuine. The more you do it, the less weird it gets.
Makes sense. It's got to be genuine, not just going through the motions because you feel like you have to. No one wants a robotic high five.
Totally. It's about making real connections. Let's switch gears a bit, talk about remote workers. How do we do all this when we're not face-to-face?
Right, good question. Especially these days. Can't exactly swing by someone's desk with a coffee when they're miles away.
True, but the book has some good tips for this. Video calls are key, not just for meetings, but for those quick check-ins that build relationships. And sending handwritten notes, little gifts that are personal to them, it's about making that extra effort to bridge the distance.
And remembering that just because they're remote doesn't mean their need for appreciation goes away. If anything, it's probably even more important to make them feel connected.
Absolutely. Appreciation is essential, no matter where you're working.
We've talked a lot about showing appreciation to colleagues, but there's one person we haven't really talked about, ourselves. How do we use these languages to appreciate our own work and efforts?
Oh, that's such a good point. And it's something the book touches on. It focuses on appreciating others, but they stress that appreciating yourself is so important. Recognizing your wins, big or small. Giving yourself credit.
So it's more than just like treating yourself after a long week. It's about really acknowledging what you've done, valuing your own contributions.
Exactly. And we can use those same 5 languages on ourselves. Like, if your language is words of affirmation, try jotting down a little note of encouragement after you finish something tough.
I love that, like giving yourself a pep talk, recognizing your own resilience. So what about those other languages? How can we apply them to ourselves?
Absolutely. If acts of service is your thing, maybe dedicate some time to organizing your workspace or finally tackling that overflowing inbox. Creating a sense of order can feel really good.
And if you're more of a quality time person, maybe it's about actually blocking off an hour for a walk, turning off those work notifications, and just being present.
Exactly. Or if tangible gifts speak to you, maybe you finally invest in that ergonomic chair you've been wanting or buy that book you've been meaning to read.
It's about being kind to ourselves, recognizing our needs and meeting those needs in a way that feels appreciative.
Yes. Self-appreciation isn't selfish. It's how we avoid burnout. Keeps you in a positive headspace. And think about it. When you feel good about yourself and your work, that's going to show up in how you interact with everyone else too. Creates a more positive and appreciative environment all around.
It's like that ripple effect, starting with self-appreciation. So, as we wrap up our deep dive today, what's the one thing you hope listeners really take away from all of this?
Appreciation is powerful. It's about understanding what makes people feel valued, ourselves included, and taking the time to express that in a way that truly connects. It's not about treating everyone the same. It's about being mindful, intentional, and genuine.
Beautifully put. A little appreciation can make such a difference in creating a more positive and productive workplace for everyone. To all our listeners, we encourage you to take a moment and ask yourself, what makes you feel valued? How can you better express appreciation to those around you? And how can you show yourself some appreciation today?
Remember, appreciating yourself is an investment in your well-being and your success.
And on that note, this wraps up our deep dive into the world of appreciation in the workplace. We hope you found these insights valuable and feel ready to create a more fulfilling and appreciative work life.